everybody, it's Wendy. Okay, so this video is sped up super fast because it would be 42 minutes long if it wasn't. This is a template that I got from sandyallnock.com, and all you do is take the tracing paper, lay it on top of the template, trace it with a pencil, then you flip your tracing paper upside down, you take your bone folder and run it over the top of that, and it transfers the charcoal from the pencil onto your watercolor paper. I'm using Arches watercolor paper, and I've outlined all of my little squares with a Sharpie marker, and I'm using the Pretty Kitty stamp set to do all of my stamping, and I'm going to be using some Post-it note masking tape to mask off the edges so that my kitty doesn't go over the edges, because I want one kitty inside of each box. This is my StazOn ink because I'm going to be doing watercoloring, so I'm using StazOn ink. And the Arches Cold Press 140 pound watercolor paper, I decided to purchase some of that and try it out. I usually use Strathmore watercolor paper, but I've been watching bunches of videos, and I took a class at onlinecardclasses.com. I took their intermediate watercolor class, and they recommended Don Woolsagel and recommended using a better quality watercolor paper, and saying that that will help you get better results when you're doing your watercoloring. So I took her advice, and I went ahead and invested in getting some Arches watercolor paper, and I will say she's absolutely right. It's the truth. You're paying a little bit more for the watercolor paper, but it's a artist grade watercolor paper instead of student grade, and it makes a huge difference as to how your watercolor goes on the paper and how it moves. Probably not something I would have noticed when I first started watercoloring, but I've done just enough watercoloring now that I could tell a difference. So all the links to all my supplies are over on my blog. The link to my blog is in the description below this video, so you can go to that link in the description below the video in order to get the information on all the products I'm using. I'm using the Misty tool as well, and you can get that from mysweetpetunia.com. And then I'm using Kuretake Gansai Tambi watercolors. And I just have the 12 pack of watercolors, and I'm perfectly comfortable mixing my colors to make other colors. They have up to a 36 color pack, but the way I've learned to watercolor has really been based in learning how to mix color. And so I'm pretty comfortable with that at this point, actually. I have to give a huge shout out to my friend Karen in Nova Scotia, who spent time teaching me how to mix colors and understanding how that works. And so she taught me a lot about that. Then I learned more in the class with Dawn, and then of course just from watching videos. So you can really pretty much get any color you want if you just have a few basic colors. So anyway, that's my spiel on that. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to rush out and buy a whole bunch of watercolors in order to color stuff, because you really don't. It's actually pretty simple to mix colors, and it's kind of fun too. Like, it makes me feel like I'm doing some sort of chemistry something or other. So I'm using a little flower here from another stamp set, and I'll be really honest with you, as I'm recording this video, I do not remember the name of the stamp set. I had to add in my black foam piece because it is a photopolymer stamp. So when you use the red rubber clear mount stamps that have the foam, you take out that little black piece. But when you use the photopolymer, you need that black mat underneath to raise up the paper so that you can stamp with your photopolymer. So I'm doing that little flower, and then I'm going to go ahead and add other little flowers in this little box right next to the one that I just stamped. And as you can see, because I masked off that area, it kind of looks like the flower is just like peeking out from the corner. And I just really like how that looks. So I was happy about that. I kind of had some trouble with these little bitty stamps because they kept sticking to my fingers, and I was trying to leave them flat on the paper and they wouldn't like get off of my fingers. They kept sticking to everything. So I finally got it though, and then was able to stamp them. I did another card doing the same technique using my Copic markers, and I'm going to show it at the end of this video, so I hope you stick around to see that. And I know that I'm talking a lot in this video, and probably you didn't need to see all of my stamping, but I really wanted to take the time to talk to you about the paper and the watercolor and tell you from a beginner's point of view where I am at with my watercoloring and why I've made some of the choices that I've made and what I've learned. So definitely now that I've used this Arches watercolor paper, I think it'll be very hard for me to use other watercolor paper, or student grade, I should say, because it stamps nicer, it holds the color nicer, the color stays wet longer. So when you add water and pigment to this paper, it's like the water sits on top of the paper for just a little bit longer. And in my experience, it's been just enough time for somebody who's more of a beginner to be able to move that color around and make some changes before it dries. Because what happens is when your watercolor dries, it creates like a hard line. And the only way for that not to happen is to keep manipulating it before it dries. The other thing is what I've noticed with this paper is when I re-wet the paper, it really lends very, very nicely to moving that ink around again or that pigment around again. It doesn't leave those harsh lines. It allows me to re-wet it, and it allows me to like basically manipulate it more. Okay, so I created my own gray color by simply putting black on my little palette here and then adding water to it. That's all I did. Because when you add water to pigment, it lessens the concentration of the pigment and the pigment gets lighter. So that's when I say like you can make your own colors, that's what I'm talking about. And all I'm doing here is using the little plastic piece that actually comes in the watercolor kit. So I took my black and I put a dab of black onto the plastic piece, and then I took my water and I kept adding water to that black pigment, and it just continually lightened up that black pigment because there was more water being added to it. So I hope that makes sense. So I'm painting all of my kitties gray because I want it to look like it's the same kitty. I'm not trying to make it like it's a bunch of different kitties. My goal was to make it look like it's the same kitty doing a bunch of different things. So I tried really hard to keep my color consistent through every kitty that I was painting. I'm using a silver brush here, watercolor brush, and I absolutely love these brushes. They work great. They're actually made out of, I think, squirrel feathers. Squirrels don't have feathers where I live. They're made out of squirrel hair and something else, I think. I think my understanding is no squirrels are harmed to make these brushes. But anyway, they work really, really great, and they have a really fine tip point on them, which is super important because it allows you to paint kind of small, intricate stuff. Where other brushes, I've had the experience that it's harder to do that with. I have not discovered all these products on my own. I watched YouTube videos just like you guys do, like a crazy person. And I've learned so much from the people that I follow and watch. And some of those people are Christina Werner, Jennifer McGuire, Sandy Allnock. She's probably the main one I watch. I basically stalk Sandy Allnock like, I don't know. She's like my addict. She's my dealer. I'm her addict and she's my dealer. And so I just think she's phenomenal. Seems like a really nice person, on top of the fact that she's like super crazy talented, so I just love watching her. Okay, so now I'm painting in the flowers on this image, and I just tried to kind of do all the flowers at the same time, and just basically I'm dabbing a little bit of pigment into the flowers. There's really no painting necessarily to be done because the images are so tiny, and that's where having this kind of nice paintbrush really comes in handy because it's got that really sharp point on the end of it. So when you're trying to do something super intricate, it makes it easier. I am realizing that I probably could stand to zoom a little bit closer to my project when I'm doing stuff like this. So I'm making a note of that, and I will try to make sure I do that because I recognize that the images are so small, you really need to be closer to see what I'm doing. So now I am filling in behind the kitties, and I want you to know that if you saw, there was a transition there in the video, and that's because this piece of work sat for probably 3 hours before I did anything else with it. I let it sit because I had other stuff to do and dry, and so that's what happened. So I painted in the backgrounds of all of those. I didn't think you needed to see all of that. I added dimensional tape to the back, and I really covered the back because there's some warping that happens with the paper when it gets saturated with water. So I covered the back with dimensional and added that. And then I'll just add a piece of Whisper White cardstock into the inside of this so that it has a nice place to write your greeting. And that will be my finished card. Now, I wanted to show you my Copic version. I actually like it more because I'm better at Copic markers than I am at watercolor. I'm still learning. And then this is my daughter's. How cute is this? She created this card also. So it was super fun. And I love how she combined the kitty and the dog in her card. All right, thanks so much for watching. If you want to see more videos from me, you can click on either of the images that you see here. I hope you subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.